Let's move on to the Scrum roles and team constraints. The Scrum framework depends on a team with a core set of working agreements. And in Scrum, we think of these as mostly roles and then actually rules, but I'm calling them constraints here. So if the organization or the team members compromise these roles and constraints, the effectiveness of Scrum is unfortunately greatly diminished. And again, in my work as a consultant and a coach, I see these compromises all the time, and it's really quite frustrating actually. So let's talk about what the roles are and the constraints are. They're actually quite simple. First and foremost, we have a product owner. The product owner is a single person who is a member of the Scrum team, and that person is accountable for ROI, the return on investment of the work of the team. That means they need to be able to both measure the cost of the work and the benefit, the value of the work. The product owner owns the product vision. They're called owner for a reason. They aren't just a product manager. The product owner manages an artifact called the product backlog, and we'll talk about the product backlog a little bit later, but basically it's an evolving list of requirements for the product that you're building. The product owner has a very specific kind of authority as well, which is to cancel a sprint. So sometimes the work that a team is doing is not effective, and this is the authority to say, hey team, we got to reset. We've got to start working in a different way for some reason. And we'll talk about sprints a little bit later as well. The product owner is responsible for working with all stakeholders, including customers, including funders, including business people, including technical people, anyone who cares about the work of the product of the Scrum team. And finally, the product owner is responsible for engaging the market. They are someone who is going to be working in the marketplace, looking at competition, doing product research and market research, potentially, or maybe having someone else do it, but they're responsible for that engagement with the market. The Scrum Master is another role with a single person doing this role. The Scrum Master is responsible for, in general, Scrum. And you can think of this role name a little bit like Master of Ceremonies. It's not that the Scrum Master is a super expert on everything to do with Scrum and Agile. Instead, it's that the Scrum Master is conducting the work in the Scrum framework. So the Scrum Master upholds the Scrum values. They serve the Scrum team, the product owner, and the organization. They enforce the rules of Scrum. Now, that word is sometimes a little bit tricky, but they are responsible for the effective application of the Scrum framework. And perhaps most difficultly and importantly, the Scrum Master is a facilitator and a coach. And we mean those words in some very specific ways. So a facilitator is a person who is helping a group of people achieve their goals instead of their own goals. The Scrum Master is not there to accomplish anything other than helping the team and the product owner and the organization. Likewise, coaching, often one-to-one, again, helping an individual or a team to achieve their own goals. Most importantly, facilitators and coaches are not experts in the work itself. So the Scrum Master is not required to be, for example, a technical expert or a business expert. Finally, we have team members. And the team members are the people who build the product increment. And so we're going to talk about this concept of increments a little bit later, but basically they build the product. They are self-organizing, which means that they volunteer for tasks rather than being told. Neither the product owner nor the Scrum Master nor anyone else tells them what to do. They innovate and solve problems. Again, we're working in a complex environment where that innovation and problem solving is needed. They collaborate with their colleagues. They have the authority to set their own capacity for work. This is really, really challenging in a lot of organizations. But the concept is that if you're truly volunteering for work, it means that you can also say no. So team members can say no individually or even collectively to how much or how little work they take on. And finally, the team members are the ones who are responsible for creating value. We put that into a sort of unit called the Scrum Team, but we also subdivide the Scrum Team and refer to a subset as the development team. Now again, I want to be very careful. Many of you are in software environments. This does not mean software development. It means the people who are doing the development of the product, and that can include anything, including marketing or sales. It can include languages. It can include copywriting. Whatever it takes to develop your product, those are the people who are in the development team. They're the ones who are actually working on the product increments. There are some constraints around this Scrum team. So I already mentioned self-organizing, but a Scrum team needs to be cross-functional. They need to have the authority and the connections with all the different kinds of functional skills that are required to build the product, and likewise multi-skilled and self-organizing. The size of a Scrum team, including the Scrum Master and the product owner, is 8. That's what's illustrated, but plus or minus 3. So as small as 5 people, as large as 11 people in a single Scrum team. And in particular, if there's more than 11, it becomes very hard to manage the complexity. And you would want to sort of keep it to that limit. Likewise, if it's less than 5, it's hard to have the diversity of skills needed to actually do complex product work. Finally, some other constraints. These are actually the hardest ones for Scrum. No dependencies. A Scrum team should not rely on any other person, team, department, vendor, or whatever in order to create their product. No dependencies. Likewise, no sub-teams. One example of doing this wrong is to have 5 people in Canada, where I am, and another 5 people in Russia working on the same Scrum team. Those are physically created sub-teams. So we're not allowed to do sub-teams. Finally, no other roles. We have product owner, Scrum Master, team member. We don't have testers or marketing people within Scrum teams. We might have people with those skills, but they don't have those roles, and that's to support self-organizing.